We have Penn State at Ohio State, who will kick off things on Saturday. What is it called? Big kick on Fox. What is it? Big noon?
Big noon?
Big noon on Fox, which I hate because it's big 12:15 Eastern. It doesn't start at noon. This is all they change these clock rules to just get more commercial. And the game will start at 12:15. You'll be waiting, watching the clock, and then it'll be noon, and then there'll just be talking heads still going through the games. But whatever. I can't wait for this game. Ohio State, 4 to 5 point favorite, depending on the book. Shop around as always. Over under down to 45.5. The under has taken significant money ever since opening. Now, the question that I have here for this game is, if you look, both head coaches I've had issues with in the past, but I will give both credit for making outstanding defensive coordinator hires, which I think you're seeing paying dividends for both stop units, right? You saw Ohio State before last season go out and get Jim Knowles after just, the defensive coordinator position was an issue for Ohio State for years. I think you're seeing that pay off this season. Defense has significantly improved. And if you look at the underlying metrics, they've been great. Ohio State goes and gets Manny Diaz. Their defense has been great as well. We will see if Denzel Burke, a couple injury questions with Ohio State. Denzel Burke, their top corner, will he play? And then their offensive injuries. You had Buka didn't travel to Purdue last week. You also had a number of injuries in their backfield. Sounds like they have a better chance to go this week, but that's definitely worth monitoring. The biggest question that I have in this game is twofold. Look, I believe in the Ohio State defense, and I think they're solid. They passed the eye test. I'm not sold on the offense. I'm just not sold on Kyle McCord. The running game isn't there. The offensive line has issues. Just go back to, they took advantage of some really slow-footed secondaries. And that, McCord has put up some good games, as he should. He has the most ridiculous set of wide receivers in college football, but it just looks off at times. And you saw that Notre Dame game. Notre Dame's a drop pick from holding them to 200 yards passing and 10 points. Even against Indiana and Youngstown State, the offense it's not quite there yet with McCord. He still doesn't look comfortable in the pocket, and I assume he's going to be under fire here the entire game. The biggest question I have in this game, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on it, because I don't know if anyone knows the answer, is Penn State, who has covered, I think, 12 in a row, dating back to last year, or 11-0-1 against the spread. They've played West Virginia, Delaware, Illinois, Iowa, Northwestern, and UMass. They played nobody. And they've played no offense with a pulse. So I'm making a leap of faith on what I see on the defense. The metrics are outstanding, and they're so elite, and they're dominating so much that you have to, give those numbers weight, and they're important, but also just the eye test to me. Their defense is legit. I think they're going to win in the trenches when Ohio State is on offense. But I do have questions about their offense. And they haven't had to do much, and their efficiency numbers look good, but there's no explosiveness in this offense at all. I mean, it is, they're outside the top 100 in explosiveness, any metric you look at. Drew Aller hasn't thrown downfield at all. So the question is, and that was the question coming into the year. Okay, let's see what Aller's got, and I want to see this wide receiver room. What can someone step up and be the alpha? That was really the question with Penn State, and they haven't had to answer it, but they will against Ohio State and Michigan. So is it that Aller just hasn't had to and he can? Or was Penn State just holding back the offense? I don't know. That's what we're going to find out. We're going to find out if Penn State's a true national title contender with that offense, because they're going to have to open it up a little bit more this weekend. I like the under. I still like it at 45.5. I think that both defenses have significant edges. I think both quarterbacks are going to be under fire, and I think that both teams are going to go pretty run heavy and be pretty conservative early on, lean on their defenses. So I think this turns into a grinder, and it ends I'm going to say 23-20, 23-17. Could see either team winning. I have these teams pretty even on a neutral field right now. So I have Ohio State is about a field goal favorite. So I have the small lean to Penn State, but just that uncertainty with their offense is keeping me away from the side. Might look to jump in live, but I did play the under. I like the under. I can't wait to learn about this Penn State offense. And we'll see if Kyle McCord, what he can do against an elite defense. What are your thoughts on this game?
I echo everything you say. I just have two different bets. I mean, I did take Penn State on open at 5. It looks like we're having a tug of war battle on the key number of 5 in the market here, with the 4.5s and 5.5s bouncing around. So make sure you get on the right side of that, whichever. I didn't know 5 was so key, but there's obviously a big battle in the market. I agree with you on everything you said as far as going under the total. What gave me a little worry with that was what happened in the fourth quarter last year, where it was tight the entire game, and then all of a sudden haymakers got thrown in the fourth quarter. I think there was 35 or 45 points. I can't remember. It was a ton of points going on in the fourth quarter, which kind of ruined everybody's unders. So if you look, this game is always super tight in the first quarter. 10 points or less have been scored in the first quarter of this game every year since 2017. If you throw out the pandemic season of 2020, I know I've personally thrown out every pandemic game from 2020. So this series is generally really low scoring, scripted plays, feeling each other out. What coverage are they presenting? Am I putting guys in motion? Like, I mean, it's really just a feeler, because Ohio State loves to put their guys in motion. They love to get defenses moving around, getting a little, not sure where they're at, try to confuse them, and then hit them with, some sort of Marvin Harrison blaze downfield. But I don't think that's what's going to happen here, because Penn State's defense is the best defense in the nation. It's the best one that they're going to face, especially from a secondary perspective. Explosives continue to be an issue for Penn State. I'll start with the rush. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, they're below 3 yards after contact. So you go and ask the question, is that Allen and Singleton's fault? Is something wrong with them? Did they digress in the offseason, or is it the offensive line? Well, Penn State is number 1 in offensive stuff rate. And, that tells me that the offensive line is doing their job. 22nd in line yards, the offensive line is doing their job. There's just no second level yards here at all. And who knows?
There's no explosiveness in the running game or passing game. It's crazy.
Yeah, and the passing game is more easy to dissect, right? Because what's happening in the second level yards with Singleton and Allen, it's just them running the ball. It has nothing to do with the play calling, or maybe offensive lineman blocking downfield is not there. I don't know. But from a passing perspective, Drew Aller's attempted 11 passes beyond 20 yards. He has a 15-0 TD to INT ratio, but he only has a 3-1 big time throw to turnover worthy play ratio, which means everything is safe. There has been 0 risky throws for this quarterback. So that comes back and says, is Mike Yurcich holding him back? Does he not think that he can do it? Are we keeping things off of film? You don't even want to let one leak versus, this really soft schedule. So I went back to, and like Mike Yurcich is an offensive coordinator, and the stops that he's had, did you ever go to game 7 or game 8 before showing explosiveness? And the answer is no. So I don't know what is going on. Like, if we don't see Penn State attempt to pass past 20 yards in this game, I mean, there is something truly wrong. Maybe Drew Aller is coming off Tommy John. I don't know. I really don't understand why the lack of explosive attempts. It's not everyone's Penn State doesn't have explosives. No, they don't have any attempts. So
yeah, like it seems like a weird thing to try to turn on the road against a good defense in your biggest game of the season halfway through the year. Like, not even like, let's try to get some rhythm on these things. And you don't have to show a lot, but let's, I know James Franklin mocked the reporter that asked, but like, yeah, let's just try to throw it downfield a couple times, and instead of trying to turn it on when you need it, because eventually you're going to.
There's a theory out there. And the fact that Jim Knowles lined up against Michigan last year and went heavy cover 0 and brought everybody, I just wonder, like, is Mike Yurcich trying to bait Ohio State into going cover 0 and rushing everybody? Like, are you trying to get that? What the scheme was against Michigan? Are you trying to pull that out of Ohio State again? So we'll see. I mean, I don't know how much of this is cat and mouse and what's going on, but on the other side of the ball, there's just too many guys that are important to Ohio State's offense that are considered hopeful. Every single running back, Mayan Williams, Chip Trayanum, Trevion Henderson, looks like he's going to play, but he was deemed hopeful. Emeka Egbuka might not be there. That means Marvin Harrison is going to get double teamed, even though I don't think he needs to, because Johnny Dixon and Kalen King are 2 of the best cornerbacks in the nation. And then you go and you look at Kyle McCord's numbers when he has pressure, 15 of 42 passing with pressure this year. Manny Diaz brings blitz heavier than any defensive coordinator in the nation, 56% blitz, 67% success rate. He causes a negative EPA. I don't expect Kyle McCord to just flip a switch and have it on here. He has average success rate and EPA against cover one and quarters. Penn State plays, they live in cover one. They cause a negative play on 20% of the time. So I agree with you. Like the under, this is an under, this is a first half under. Either way you shave it, I think you and I are key there. Penn State will do enough to cover here. This game's going to be an offensive slog. We don't know who's going to be successful in taking shots downfield. So I'm going to stick with Penn State on the side because I backed them to make the college football playoff. This is a game we have to have. I power rate at 3. I'm sticking with Penn State, but I have a lot more money on the first half under.
Yeah, they don't necessarily need it, but the tiebreakers probably won't break their way because if they beat Michigan at home and then Michigan beats Ohio State, and it'll come down to tiebreakers in your West Division opponents. So yeah, I think they, at the end of the day, probably need to win this game. Hopefully they do for our futures. This game has massive Big Ten college football playoff national title implications. We'll learn a lot about each first-time starting quarterback. For what it's worth, Ohio State has won 6 straight in this series. This will mark the first meeting where both are unbeaten, meeting in Columbus since 2018. I mentioned this briefly, but curious to get any of your thoughts. Denzel Burke, who struggled early, he has the potential to be a first-round cornerback. He struggled early adjusting the Knowles' system, but has now been playing very well. He got hurt last week. Freshman Jermaine Matthews stepped up as a replacement. Jordan Hancock got some more run on the outside. How big do you think Burke?
Huge. He's their best coverage defender by far at corner. He was able to play one-on-one coverage, whoever that's going to be against Penn State. He has more forced incompletions and more PBUs than anybody else in that secondary. Again, are we going cover 0 and coming at Drew Aller without Burke? I'm really that's a huge loss. That's another reason I'm not peeling off my Penn State +5. He is such a big piece of that defense that makes the field even more open for Aller when he's looking at targets. Because I figured he would avoid Burke with how good his number is, but if he's not there, open field.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Ohio State fan, this might be a big game for Julian Fleming. But Penn State's coverage has been excellent. I know the schedule, you have to take a leap of faith here because the schedule hasn't been great. But I like the talent. I like Manny Diaz. I still think, even though you have talent, no one's covering Marvin Harrison Jr. One-on-one. So I think you trust your other guys, and then you just roll help over. Notre Dame took him away. That's what they did. Indiana did the same thing. And in both of those games, Ohio State's offense was completely hampered. So I think Harrison's a generational talent. I think you have to help and not let him beat you on his own. Because even when McCord's been off, like it doesn't even when Harrison's in single coverage or let to roam free against zone, or he's going to come down with the ball, even if it's not perfectly thrown, and he's going to make plays and potentially score multiple touchdowns. I think you cannot let him beat you.
I got a stat in this area. I love this stat. So on target is if you hit your receiver in stride. If he doesn't have to move, hits him in the numbers, he can just keep running. You hit him perfectly. Ohio State's offense is 64th in on-target rate. Penn State's defense is the number 1 defense in the nation in on-targets allowed. So that is definitely something to watch to see if Marvin Harrison has to extend himself to get a catch.
Yeah. Yeah, it's we'll learn a lot about each team. That's just going to be the nature of how the Big Ten plays out this year, because there's no depth this year. It's like Michigan has played nobody all year, and guess what? They look dominant. We got to give them credit for that, and they're one of the teams in discussion. But we haven't really learned how good, because they haven't played anybody, and they won't play anybody until they play at Penn State.
Yep.
And we'll have this same discussion on Michigan, and what happens here will certainly impact that line, because I don't think the market ratings on Michigan are going to change much between now and then when they play Michigan State and Purdue, unless they somehow get upset. So yeah, a lot to learn in the Big Ten, even with Ohio State. Like Ohio State at least has that data point against Notre Dame, but it wasn't a great data point. Like they should have lost that game. They should have only scored 10 points. But other than that, they haven't really played anyone either. And they struggled at times versus Maryland. They've had some good games against Western Kentucky and Purdue, two teams that don't have secondaries. That's not the case with Penn State. So can't wait for this one. Noon Eastern, or I should say 12:15 Eastern on Fox. All right, let's move on to, and we are go Penn State. I know my dad will be happy that I'm rooting for Penn State. Diehard Penn State fan.